His great-great-grandfather was Admiral Lord Samuel Hood, who served the Royal Navy from the Seven Years' War right up to like the Siege of Toulon and commanded the Mediterranean fleet at that time. So he also in 1793 had HMS Victory as his flagship, Craig. So I mean, just like I really like these long traditional families that are serving, and that was a family where Hood's younger brother also reached the rank of vice admiral, and a cousin also reached the rank of admiral. Now, anyways, these three battle cruisers decide to come in, and he, noticing what Beatty and Jellicoe and Scheer are also trying to do, he moves his ships across the line, as you can see here, to get onto the vanguard and be the actual leads. And at this moment, they engage the Lutzow and Deflinger, two battle cruisers which have already been pretty battered, with Lutzow being the flagship of Admiral Hipper. They are freshly trained, they have much better gunnery, and they're engaging at 9,000 yards. And with the damage that they're beating, it's at this point the Lutzow is made completely inoperable. It doesn't sink yet. Okay, I think I just gave that away now. I'm sorry, but its bow was so low in the water that it is pretty much just like, almost submerged. That's the amount of damage the Lutzow took, which actually would cause Hipper to get out of the battle for a few hours, because he would board with the damage and the loss of its communications. Hipper would leave the Lutzow at around 6:30. He would board a destroyer and transfer to the Moltke on one of his battle cruisers. Simon, I think you'd like the person for who that ship is named after. But
the absolute genius that is Moltke.
The Elder.
And always remember, it's named after Moltke the Elder, not the Younger. Never confuse them. Never.
But because of subsequent maneuvering, which I will discuss, he is not going to be able to board the Moltke from the destroyer till like 10 o'clock at night. So for about 4 hours, he's not going to be, playing any role in the battle. And however, these two ships, even though they are pretty badly damaged, they decide to fire on Admiral Hood's flagship, the Invincible. And the Invincible is a pretty ironic name now. That's all I'm going to say. Once again, the fire from the Lutzow, a 12-inch shell hits the Q turret of Invincible. The shell penetrates and goes into the magazine below the turret, and well, kaboom. And I think this is a good, like, if you could see this GIF and animation I found, it gives an idea of how these turrets fire and where their magazine and powder is. So they're right below the turret to obviously facilitate the movement of the shells and such. So if you can imagine like a 12-inch shell hitting this magazine, well, I think that's also what happens to the Arizona, Craig.
Yep, one of the most catastrophic hits in the history of naval warfare.
Yeah, but ironically, the
I hate that one too. That's the worst.
Yeah. Indefatigable and the Queen Mary, the other two battle cruisers that had been lost, they were practically lost to the same reason.
Yeah, it's almost identical. Yeah.
Yeah, and those who listened or watched the last episode also noticed, like how I mentioned that the same thing happened to the German in a previous battle, and because of that they fixed this, which is why it's not as much happening to them.
I do plan to actually get into the doctrine of the ships, Simon. It's a point I do have to make, but I think I'll get that into the end when the inquests and all were done in the aftermath. But yeah, going into the Q turret, HMS Lion nearly even suffered that same fate of that one shell blowing it up, but Major Francis Harvey ordered the magazine compartment to be flooded with his dying breaths, so that the force of the explosion went upwards and not through the ship horizontally,
And they pretty
which
much
ensured
they conclusively proved if he didn't do it in the timely fashion he did, it would have absolutely exploded.
that 3 dead battle cruisers. Definitely agree with you, Craig.
Yeah.
So according to the reports that Welland shell, when the Q turret exploded, the explosions also went and rocked the A and X turrets. So the foremost and aftmost turrets. The ship was split in half, and only 6 men of its 1,032 men survived. Admiral Hood was not amongst them, the survivors. And the funny thing is, it did not actually even sink to the bottom. So the reason is HMS Invincible, it kind of almost broke in half. And it's a ship that's almost 600 feet long. And the sea at this point the North Sea, the depth is about 180 feet or so. So it's still like, sticking out like two prows, the wrecks of the ship. However, the Lhasa, it did put in the last blows that would destroy the Lhasa, forcing its scuttling much later on. Now, at this time, as Scheer is moving up, right, he doesn't know what's going on because Admiral Scheer in his flagship, just gonna tell you, he was I don't know what. Do you know what ship he was on? Oh yeah, it's called the Friedrich der Gross, which was the Kaiser class dreadnought. Sorry. Now that ship was 13th in the line. So they're moving in a single column line. He's 13th. If you consider the number of capital ships that the Germans have brought forward, that's kind of in the middle, if you include the battle cruisers. And as one of his lieutenants would quote right after the war, Scheer said the lack of information meant that Scheer had the foggiest idea of what is happening right now. Typical naval battles.
Literally the foggiest.
For the audio
As I said,
listeners, if you were looking at the full map of the battle, it really does appear as if the Germans are just freaking out and making dramatic turns whenever the enemy gets too close.
that's pretty much actually what both try to do,
Yeah.
like when they want to engage or disengage. But because of this fog of war, right? There's established doctrinal decisions that most of these guys would follow, and that kind of makes their decisions a bit easier. Now, the thing is, the ships around Scheer, they know that they are engaging the British, but they are actually in a disadvantageous position because the fog and smoke is blowing in their direction, which hampers their visibility anymore. They are maybe able to see some muzzles flashes of the British at best, but the British at least have better visibility on them, so they are able to, drain more accurate fire at this moment. Not like it's super effective, but you don't want to really fight an enemy who are able to shoot back at you better than you are able to return fire. Now it is at around here, right, where you see the number 3, this is now about 6:35 p.m. He decides to break off contact, reassess the situation, and then decide. So he sends out an order: battle about turn to starboard, which means all ships where they are at that position in the water are gonna turn 180 degrees from their starboard angle and start their retreat to disengage and move in a westerly direction. So he's not following how the British retreated, where they they still maintained their line formation. Every ship turned at their same moment. And it was one of the most well executed maneuvers of this battle because the British don't even know what happened. And at 6:36, the leading British ships and Jellicoe, they're like, where did the leading German ships disappear? They had no idea that they had broken off, and even half of the British dreadnoughts had not yet even seen the enemy. They knew there was firing, but they had themselves not seen anything. And he is going to continue moving in this easterly direction. He does not want to turn to that westerly direction, which some might have reported, because he felt that he's going to move into a trap. He wants to go into this east and then turn south, so that at least he's going to fall back on in between the Germans and the line of retreat to their home ports at Wilhelmshaven. And at this moment, HMS Marlborough does hit a torpedo or a mine. It's never really been determined what, and really caused that damage. And this was the only dreadnought damage that I think Jellicoe does suffer till this point. So the only time a British dreadnought got damaged right now. Now, it's important to note that the Marlborough is now going to drift from like the front of the vanguard, like the British force, to the rear. In the night action, it could have made a big difference. Now, at this moment, the British are moving in a southerly direction now at a speed of about 17 knots. And, they're just moving without much intel. Now, Scheer maintains that 180-degree turn and heads west for 20 minutes before he gives the exact same order once again. So they've just made an about turn again, and they're now sailing into the British Grand Fleet. Now, why does he do it? No idea. I don't think he even really knew it himself. Because according to one of his writings in the aftermath, they say he wanted to deal a blow to the center of the enemy. And also another report, when he was questioned by Kaiser Wilhelm, he was saying it was too early to assume the night cruising formation orders, and the enemy could have sailed and cut us off before dark and forced us into an engagement, or they could snap away the initiative from us. And then he said, cut off our retreat. So he said the only way we could have done this is to advance against the main force, regardless of the cost, and deal a big blow to them. And even this time, not only just engage with the capital ships, but even bring the cruisers and destroyers into the action. So, maybe they can deal out a big punishment. And another reason was saying, he said that at the time of this first turn here, one of the German light cruisers, Wiesbaden, had been disabled by a British shell. So he wanted to about turn the entire fleet to rescue that one ship. That is another reason that was postulated. I think the reality is he just also did not probably know why he did this. Again, a lot of this.
Well, if he did decide to save that one ship, that's I would call that a cost-effective way of saving stuff.